Hi, and welcome to episode 83 of Toke Signals TV, where we bring you the biggest in cannabis and hemp news stories every week. I'm Steve Elliott, the editor at tokesignals.com, and I'll be guiding you through the news. First, let's take a look at our Toke Signals Bud Pick of the Week. We got a nice one this week for you. This particular attractive strain is an indica known as Jerry Berry. And I found this at a place called Integrative Medicine in Kingston, Washington, my hometown. The reason that is so notable is that it is the first medical marijuana dispensary ever in Kingston. I was happy to see it for reasons of convenience and selection. Let's do the news now, shall we? In Washington State this week, another reminder that we still have a long way to go when it comes to freeing the weed. Welcome to legalization. Seattle Cannabis Cup canceled. You hear that massive sucking sound? That's the sound of all of Washington's promised cannabis tourism dollars going south to Oregon. You know the windfall that was promised to Washington state voters if they approved Initiative 502, the anemic, problem-plagued marijuana legalization initiative that has become a nationwide laughingstock? I-502 has become, in effect, a bad example of how not to do legalization, even as Colorado and Oregon laugh all the way to the bank. Welcome to Washington State's dumbass brand of legalization, where in reality we are slipping backwards from the progress we achieved with medical marijuana to restrictive new recreational rules that forbid on-site consumption. When greedy 502 merchants got these rules passed to shut down medical marijuana dispensaries, they cut off their noses to spite their faces. And most of them are too clueless to recognize this, even now. I-502, along with its companion piece of legislation, SB 5052, collapses the medical marijuana market as we have known it in Washington since the medical marijuana law was approved by voters back in 1998. It funnels all public marijuana-related activities through the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board, the LCB, formerly the Liquor Control Board. And as reported by Jake Ellison at the Seattle PI, the LCB has now claimed its first victim, the High Times Cannabis Cup in Seattle. Not that the absence of arrogant, self-aggrandizing High Times staffers or their pretentious party in the Emerald City is any great loss, mind you. We normally do just fine in Seattle without clueless, braying jackasses like Rectal Russ Belville, a vocal supporter of I-502, it must be noted, in town. What's a much bigger bummer is the fact that the Cup's cancellation is emblematic of the restrictive nature of I-502 and 5052, and the fact that those cannabis tourism dollars may never materialize under these benighted rules. Although the High Times Cup has already had 3 events in Washington State, twice in Fremont and last year in Everett, the magazine ran into insurmountable obstacles with the implementation of legalization, according to Editor-in-Chief Dan Skye. So we have basically given up, and it's a real shame because Portland is jumping on this, and we're going to have a huge cup in early August there, Skye said, letting us know that our neighbors in Oregon are more than happy to take all that cash Washington State just effectively turned down. I-502's restrictive rules don't allow for selling marijuana outside of licensed brick-and-mortar stores, and no sampling is allowed on the store's property. Giving marijuana to anyone, anywhere is prohibited. The infamous pass a joint and break the law part of I-502's incredibly poorly written language. In past years, growers and dispensaries openly sampled their goods at the Cup and numerous other events covered by the medical marijuana law. That protection is going away, ironically due to, you guessed it, legalization. We're trying to legitimize this industry with a trade show that is open to all people, so they can sample the best merchandise of the Washington area, Skye said. So the people who are going to lose out are the Washington businesses. They did very well there last year, and we're disappointed. We have bent over backwards to work with the LCB, and it has just not worked out, Skye said. It's a shame because we had a great turnout last year, and as far as I can see, the politicians and bureaucrats are completely screwing up your marijuana program there, Skye said. Taxes are out of control, and the black market is back. Turning our attention to Texas this week, where unexpected news tells us a House committee has approved a bill to make marijuana legal for all adults. The Texas House of Representatives Criminal Jurisprudence Committee on Wednesday approved a bill on a 5-to-1 vote that would end marijuana prohibition in the Lone Star State. HB 2165, introduced back in March by Representative David Simpson, a Republican from Longview, Texas, would strike references to marijuana offenses from Texas statutes, resulting in marijuana being treated similarly to other legal crops. Nearly 3 out of 5 Texas voters, 58%, support making marijuana legal for adults and regulating it like alcohol, according to a statewide survey conducted by Public Policy Polling in September 2013. 4 states have adopted laws that regulate and tax marijuana similarly to alcohol. 2 of them, Colorado and Washington, have established regulated systems of marijuana cultivation and sales with varying degrees of effectiveness. Alaska and Oregon are in the process of implementing similar systems. Marijuana prohibition's days are numbered in the Lone Star State, said Heather Fazio, Texas political director for the Marijuana Policy Project. Texas voters recognize that punishing adults for consuming a substance that is safer than alcohol is a waste of law enforcement resources and an affront to individual liberty. It appears most of the committee members agree. State officials are increasingly becoming fed up with the failed federal government policy of marijuana prohibition, and they're taking action, Fazio said. Like most Americans, most Texans are ready for a more sensible, fiscally sound marijuana policy. In Puerto Rico this week, the governor signed an executive order to legalize medical marijuana. Governor Alejandro Garcia Padilla of Puerto Rico on Sunday signed an executive order legalizing medical marijuana in the U.S. territory. The order enables the Puerto Rican Health Department to authorize the use of marijuana and its derivatives for medical purposes. The health secretary now has 3 months to produce a report etching out the details of this new system. In 2013, a medical marijuana bill was introduced into the Puerto Rican legislature, but it remained stuck in the House of Representatives. Governor Garcia's executive order is exactly what was needed, according to Ethan Nadelman, executive director of the Drug Policy Alliance. It was the right and legal thing to do, given both the absence of a ballot initiative process in Puerto Rico and the inability of the legislature to pass needed legislation, according to Nadelman. 23 U.S. states, the District of Columbia, and Guam have approved medical marijuana laws. 4 jurisdictions have passed laws taxing and regulating marijuana for adult use, and the federal government has made it clear that they will not interfere with properly administered state marijuana programs. Jamaica recently passed a far-reaching marijuana bill which will set up a legal medical marijuana industry there. The Chilean government has authorized a foundation to cultivate marijuana for medicinal purposes, and in 2013, Uruguay legalized both medical and non-medical marijuana. Governor Garcia's action is a compassionate move and demonstrates a regard for scientific evidence, said Hannah Hetzer, policy manager of the Americas for the DPA. This will alleviate the unnecessary suffering of thousands of patients in Puerto Rico, while also generating revenue and much-needed employment. We're taking a significant step in the area of health that is fundamental to our development and quality of life, said Governor Garcia. I am sure that many patients will receive appropriate treatment that will offer them new hope. The governor added that studies conducted in the U.S. have shown that cannabis can assist in those in pain with serious diseases. In Louisiana this week, and if you are noticing states like Louisiana and Texas where progress is being made, you're noticing the same thing I am. The Louisiana Senate approved medical marijuana, and that bill is headed to the House. The Louisiana Senate on Monday approved legislation which would legalize the medicinal use of cannabis. Senate Bill 143, which spells out how the state's medical marijuana industry would work, was approved on a 22-13 vote. If the bill is approved by the Louisiana House, patients with a doctor's authorization could obtain cannabis in non-smokable form at one of 10 dispensaries across the state. The bill passed on Monday approves of one growing site. SB 143, sponsored by Senator Fred Mills, a Republican from New Iberia, would restrict the use of medicinal cannabis to patients with glaucoma, spastic quadriplegia, and for those undergoing chemotherapy treatment for cancer. The Louisiana legislature legalized medical marijuana in 1978 and then again in 1991, but neither of those bills allowed for legal dispensing of the herb. The Department of Health and Hospitals was supposed to write rules for dispensary nearly a quarter century ago, but they never did. Three state agencies would have rulemaking authority under Mills' bill. The Louisiana Board of Medical Examiners would set rules about doctors' authorizations for marijuana. The Louisiana Board of Pharmacy would set rules about dispensaries. And the Louisiana Department of Agriculture would set rules for the single grow site allowed in the state. Governor Bobby Jindal indicated 2 weeks ago that he is open to signing legislation legalizing medical marijuana as long as the industry is tightly regulated. Mills' legislation would allow the state to track sales in order to detect doctor shopping. It also includes a sunset clause forcing the legislature to readopt the law or to allow it to expire after 5 years after examining its impact. Lawmakers will be called upon in 2020 to determine if there's not a surge in the number of people who have glaucoma, said cynical state Senator Eric LaFleur, a Democrat from Ville Platte, Louisiana, who added the sunset clause as an amendment to the bill. Mills sponsored a similar bill last year, but it died in the Senate Committee on Health and Welfare on a 2-6 vote. That same committee notably approved the bill this year without an objection from any member. Some of the committee members who voted against the bill last year, in fact, spoke up for it this time and voted for it on the Senate floor Monday evening. The difference, according to Mills, was collaboration on the bill with the Louisiana Sheriff's Association. The lobby group opposed the bill last year, but its official stance this year became neutral. The Sheriff's Association's executive director, Mike Renatza, sat by Mills' side during the debate in committee. He even spoke about how marijuana can possibly help patients who need it. Renatza said he was especially moved after a colleague's daughter died of cancer within the past year, after having asked him to find a way to make cannabis legally accessible to patients like her. Mills is a pharmacist by profession, and he became interested in medical marijuana when a patient contacted him about legal access. Since he has become a spokesman for the issue, other patients and doctors have shared their stories with him. This legislation now goes to the Louisiana House for consideration. I ask you to vote yes for patients across the state, Mills said to his colleagues on the House floor Monday evening. In Delaware this week, a House committee approved a bill removing criminal penalties for marijuana possession. The Delaware House of Representatives Public Safety and Homeland Security Committee on Wednesday approved a bill 5-4 which would remove criminal penalties and potential jail time for possession of a small amount of marijuana and replace those with a civil fine similar to a traffic ticket. That bill now moves to the full House for consideration. HB 39, introduced by Representative Helen Keeley, a Democrat from Wilmington South, would make possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana a civil violation punishable by a $100 fine with no possibility of jail. Under current Delaware law, possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana is a misdemeanor, punishable by up to a $575 fine and up to 3 months in jail. This is a modest, common-sense policy change that is long overdue in Delaware, according to Representative Keeley. Simply possessing a small amount of marijuana does not warrant jail time and the other serious consequences of a criminal conviction. The punishment should fit the crime, not cause more harm than the crime. More than 2/3 of Delaware voters, 68%, support removing criminal penalties for marijuana possession and making it a civil offense punishable by a fine of up to $100 with no possibility of jail time. That's according to a statewide survey conducted in March by Public Policy Polling. Only 26% said they were opposed. In California, it looks like they're coming after medical marijuana, and law and order is the phrase of the day. What's so scary about a free market? Almost 2 decades after California voters approved the medicinal use of marijuana, the state's cannabis trade is being described as a wild west, even as it has reached the status of a $2 billion a year industry. Legislators, of course, are doing what lawmakers do. They want to bring law and order to the business. There are currently 3 bills in the legislature which would codify how medicinal cannabis is grown and sold in the Golden State, including whether the state or local municipalities have control and what environmental and health issues should be addressed. There are no rules or regulations in California, claims State Senator Mike McGuire. For 2 decades now, the Golden State has allowed the cannabis industry to grow unchecked. McGuire is sponsoring the Medical Marijuana Public Safety and Environmental Protection Act, SB 643, which focuses on the impact of growing on the environment. He said illegal marijuana grows are deforesting government lands, polluting waterways, and affecting the health of those who use medical marijuana, whatever that means, since most medical marijuana is grown legally in the state, not in national forests. One provision of McGuire's bill, which has no sponsors other than its author, would require that all cannabis be certified organic by 2022 to eliminate polluted runoff into state waterways and make pot safer to use. Two bills making their way through the assembly, meanwhile, pit marijuana growers against law enforcement and city government. Many cannabis cultivators and sellers, including the California Cannabis Industry Association and the Emerald Growers Association, a trade group of Northern California pot farmers, support Assembly Bill 34, written by Assembly members Rob Bonta and Reginald Jones Sawyer. AB 34 would create a strong regulatory regime to help the industry come out of the shadows and increase safety and quality of the product, according to Bonta, who said his team met with more than 30 stakeholders while drafting the proposal. Bonta's bill would give more power to state agencies, including Alcoholic Beverage Control, the State Department of Public Health, and the Department of Food and Agriculture, but would leave room for local ordinances. It's the single most thoughtful, innovative bill on the subject California has ever seen, according to Hezekiah Allen, Executive Director of the EGA. Competing with AB 34 is AB 266, written by Assemblymember Ken Cooley. Now, this plan, sponsored by the California Police Chiefs Association and the League of California Cities, is the COPS Dream Plan, putting power in the hands of local authorities while including some state oversight. The major component of AB 266 is local control, claimed David Bejarano, head of the California Police Chiefs Association. We understand that some cities currently have bans, so we need to respect that local control and authority, he said. Under AB 266, a single state agency would issue marijuana licenses to sellers and growers, but local municipalities would create their own ordinances for cultivation and sale and handle the majority of enforcement. Growers, including Allen, opposed this plan, pointing out that the wine and liquor industries require regulation by multiple state agencies due to their complexity. No other multi-billion-dollar industry is regulated by one department, Allen pointed out. Many growers feel that AB 266 comes from a law enforcement urban perspective, Allen said, and feel that it is fundamentally challenging for growers, having spent several decades on the other side of the war on drugs, to work with the police chiefs as a bill sponsor. McGuire's bill, SB 643, has cleared 2 Senate committees and is now headed to the Senate Appropriations Committee. AB 266 and AB 34 also cleared the same legislative hurdle this week, clearing the Committee on Business and Professions, and both are headed to the Assembly Appropriations Committee, where they'll be heard in the coming weeks. In Kentucky, a bit of good news, the hemp industry is growing and attracting processors and investment. Kentucky's industrial hemp crop is in the ground, growing, bringing new investors to the state, Agriculture Commissioner James Comer announced at a Tuesday news conference in Lexington. According to Comer, 121 participants have been selected to grow hemp this year, including 7 universities across the state. 36 groups and projects will grow 1,742 acres of hemp this year in Kentucky, according to Comer. Last year was the first in decades that a legal hemp crop was grown in Kentucky, and it had 20 farmers growing just over 33 acres. The re-emerging industry has attracted 24 licensed hemp processors who are investing in the state, according to Comer. With their investment, jobs have been created, jobs are going to be created, and they've signed contracts with family farmers, Comer said. Hemp equals jobs and true economic growth, which is what we predicted when we launched Senate Bill 50 2 years ago. Among the investors are Colorado's Stanley Brothers, who said on Tuesday they plan to grow hemp in Kentucky for their Charlotte's Web CBD oil, used to treat seizures in children. Joel Stanley, CEO of Stanley Brothers Social Enterprises, said they plan to invest at least $500,000 this year in Kentucky. We want to make Charlotte's Web a Kentucky-proud product, Stanley said. This year is certainly a pilot year. We're looking at introducing our genetic varieties for Charlotte's Web this year, and we'll be doing that very soon, actually, and basically hoping to move a large part of our operation here to Kentucky. Stanley said they grew 20 acres last year in Colorado and will grow 40 acres in Colorado this year. We'll be growing about 100 acres here in Kentucky, he said. These are varieties used to create the Charlotte's Web product line. Now, according to Kristen Branscombe, marketing director for the Kentucky Department of Agriculture, millions of dollars have already been invested in hemp production and processing in Kentucky. Before we go this week, there's a must-read story by my friend Donald Lambert, an activist from San Diego, California. It's called Compassion Killed by Greed, Marijuana and the Green Rush. Donald's fundamental premise is she believes that human beings should have more rights than corporations. And I certainly agree with her on that, and I would direct your attention to her piece on Toke Signals this week, Compassion Killed by Greed. Hope you check it out. See you next week. Until then, stay lifted.